If you want to hone in on a red thread or a through line that ties your brand together, I'm going to share a powerful framework to do that. Then how to convert that into story so that you can reach your ideal clients, your audience on an emotional level. And then finally, how to translate that into strategy. Many of you guys know me from my brand archetype quiz, which has been taken over 250,000 times now, which is wild. But then I've also done a lot of work behind the scenes. I've been working with a few long-standing one-on-one clients, worked with over 100 brands one-on-one over the years. And then I've had thousands of you amazing entrepreneurs in my different online courses, which is an absolute honor. I have my traditional degree in marketing and business, but I like to say that my real degree or my real insight and experience has come from being in the trenches and actually doing this. I started my online business in, I think, January of 2013. It's over 10 years ago. Had been in other types of business before that, but this latest iteration was over a decade ago. And I've been figuring out what works. Fortunately, I don't have a promise of a magic bullet today. Hopefully I don't lose too many of you when I say that, but there is thankfully a process and there's ways to arrive at clarity so that you can feel more empowered, more equipped to go out there and make that positive, iterative improvements and momentum growing over time. So we're going to talk about the core idea, the core concept that makes your brand irresistible, how to weave that into story. You may have heard the phrase before that storytelling sells or story sells. And it's because the human brain is designed to receive stories more than just raw data or information. So we need to become skilled at that process of taking information and turning it into story. And then how we can bridge the gap between that clarity and then bring that into action in our business. Because if we don't, we can get stuck in a endless loop of second guessing, of continually coming back to education and learning and researching and running surveys and doing all of those testing types of things without actually seeing the results that we desire from our businesses. And I won't put this on you, but when I got started in business, I was always searching outside of myself for answers. I was always looking for the next mentor, guru, somebody that could help point the way. And at the end of the day, nobody can tell you what your brand should be. I can't gift you a brand on a silver platter. It has to come from inside of you. And it's not until you come to that internal inside out clarity that you feel really confident to be like, you know what, this resonates with me. I do need a guru or an expert that can teach me about this specific thing. Or I'm really excited about this mentorship program or this experience that I'm going to invest in, but I'm going to enter into that container fully knowing who I am and how I want to show up. We need that anchor. I hope you have paper ready because we are going to get to work. I hope this is as useful and practical as possible that you can take and run with what we're about to talk about. I like to think about building a brand as almost like a plan. I think this is a really functional analogy for what we're trying to do here, because the stronger our core is, the more dense our core of our planetary brand is, the greater the gravitational pull. And when we have a really strong sense of self, this core concept that we're going to talk about, it works as a magnet. It's pulling in people that resonate. And people stay in our brand orbit if they think that we're providing them value, if they find that we give them useful ideas and valuable insights, they stick around. And that can't happen. That magical transformation when we work with somebody can't happen unless they know about us in the first place. So we have to pull them in with this central idea that they can hold on to. So our goal is to make that core concept so strong, so magnetic, and so dense that people are drawn to that. And the way that we're going to do this is introducing what I like to call our core concept. Our core concept has 3 elements in it. It has our question, answer, and gap. So if you have a piece of paper in front of you, highly recommend laying it out this way. question, answer, gap. And then we're going to talk about what each of these three things are. When you have really strong brand clarity and you communicate that again and again and again, it creates this echo effect where your ideal clients will hear it when they're like ready to receive that message. And I'm like, oh yes, that's what I need. But we have to get to that clarity first. Step one, what is your overarching question? What's a question that you have been trying to answer for your entire life or for like a long period in your life? It may not even be precisely related to what you're doing right now. So maybe you're not asking yourself, how do I be a better copywriter? But what's a question that you have been seeking the answer to in one form or another? What patterns can you see when you look back on your life? What are the reoccurring challenges that keep popping up again and again? What are you passionate about answering? Another way of looking at this is sometimes our mess becomes our message. So when we overcome a giant challenge in our life, that can become, as Simon Sinek says, our why. It can become this red thread throughout all of the work that we're doing. You can also think about it like our obsessions can become our offer. So these things that we're just naturally curious about often shows up in our work in different ways. And even if you have jumped from, say, like industry to industry to industry, we can see the patterns when we look backwards. The reason why the overarching question is so powerful to identify is because when you're feeling like you're in the tornado of uncertainty, just trying to look forward into the future feels really murky. Like we don't even know what the heck is going on right now in our present. How are we going to figure out what our vision is for the future? But when we turn our gaze backwards, we can see with 2020 hindsight, the things that we have been building that have led us up to this point now. So some of the overarching questions that both come from me and from some of the one-on-one clients that I've worked with are first my own. Who am I really? How do I express that? I have answered it in terms of branding. I've attempted to answer this with therapy, with hypnotherapy, with all of these different modalities, but that has been the question that has been on my mind. A dear friend and client of mine has been answering through all of her different offers and life as a mother is, how can I be the strongest mom that I can be? Another client was, how can we empower the next generation of global leaders? He had this just varied smorgasbord of a professional career, but the through line when he looked backwards is that he was always helping leaders work with other leaders across countries and across the globe. How can I help women feel more loved? So it's from a relationship coach that was a client. Maybe your question is, how do I make more money? No shame in that. But if that has been the overarching question, it's powerful to own it. How do I create abundance? How do I create the life that my family wants to live through the work that I'm doing? Maybe what does sustainable health actually mean? I had an amazing VIP session with a new one-on-one brand client just this past week. And that was her question. What does sustainable health look like? What does it mean? What is it included? And the reason why these are so magnetic is because humans, we like to think that we are unique, and we are unique in so many ways, but the things that humans value and the things that humans are really curious about answering show up again and again and again. There's patterns. And when we identify what our overarching question is, even if it isn't something that is exactly what somebody else's overarching question is, they can relate with it. We're digging down beneath the surface of our brand, beyond just the nuts and bolts of what you're selling, to come up with this kernel of truth that we can speak to again and again and again. And it becomes something that's more compelling than just selling a widget. So what is your overarching question? So our step 2 of our core concept is your unique answer. How do you uniquely answer this question? This is where we start to bring it back more to the surface, more to the practical level. So once you know what your overarching question is, how have you answered this for yourself? How has your story, your skills, your experiences, all of the nuggets that you've gathered along the way, How has that created a unique answer to this really deep and compelling question? So for me, mine is brand strategy. It is the answer to who am I and how am I going to express this in the world? And I know that I have a gift. Another part of this isn't part of my question, but the themes and the patterns that are present in our past are often our greatest gifts. So when I think about those chameleon tendencies, even though it's problematic on one sense, it points to this gift, this intuitive knowing that I have. I'm able to read people. I'm able to read a situation really adeptly and really quickly and really accurately. So as I was looking back at that experience and that overarching question, and asking myself how I solved it, it was through that intuition. I also noticed that, hey, I'm really interested in marketing. I'm really interested in brands and psychology. How can I bring all of this together to create my own unique answer for other people who are also searching to the answer to a similar question? So maybe a few more prompts will help you create what your answer is. And again, don't overthink this. Often the answer to your overarching question is whatever you're doing in business right now. We have a pretty great intuitive sense of the work that we should be doing because we've been collecting all these data points along the way. So when have you created the greatest value in your life? Maybe it's not in your current business, maybe it's in a past experience that you're in, but what were you doing where you created the most value? How have you created the best and most profound results, both for yourself or for other people? What were you doing? How are you your own case study? How has your unique experiences or your unique skill set helped solve that overarching question? The interesting thing about your answer is that other people, other brands could have the exact same overarching question, which often they will, because again, humans have patterns. We have related desires and pain points in this experience called life. So somebody else could have the exact same overarching question and answer it in a different way, and that's perfect. This doesn't have to be 100% unique to you and your business. We're going to talk more about how to make this unique to you and your business in our next steps. But I could have gone into life coaching. I could have gone into being a therapist. I could have focused 100% on design or personal style to answer that question. But again, I'm pulling together my unique set of skills and talents to answer this. For my client who asked, how could I be the strongest mom that I could be? She could teach people weightlifting, physical therapy, mental strength, Pilates, start a community just to create community and mental support. How can we empower the next generation of global leaders? Maybe it's mentorship, masterminds, coaching. Maybe it's an app or technology. Again, we don't have to limit ourselves to our perspective in terms of how this is answered. There's many different ways that we could answer this, but we want to find that overlap in the Venn diagram of what's the question and how can I best serve people in answering this question. And the beautiful thing about this is you could even continue to extrapolate this further. So even though I know what my overarching question is, I know that I'm answering with brand strategy, it doesn't mean that we're limited by the way that we deliver these results. So I could talk about brand strategy in a book, in a podcast, in a course, simply one-on-one clients through agency services. There's a million different ways I could deliver that answer, but we want to get to that clarity at the top so that our clients, no matter what product or what offer we're putting in front of them at any given point, we still have that through line that we're coming back to. And then finally, our third step in creating this strong core concept for our brand is to identify the gap. And we're employing some psychological levers to help people see the value in what we offer here. And then finally, what stops people from answering this for themselves? And one of the biggest things that I find is necessary with clarity and with being that magnet to our ideal clients is a little bit of swagger. And we need to develop this swagger within ourselves by reminding ourselves why our work is so gosh darn valuable. We have to stop discrediting ourselves. We have to stop We have to stop. I'm going to use a double negative here. We have to stop stopping ourselves before we even get into action. Because when we're stuck in our own head of like, is this the best answer? Is this the right overarching question? That stops us from helping the people that we're meant to help. So this step 3 of our core concept is about reminding both ourselves and our audience why this is important. So for me, my gap, why should people focus on brand strategy, and why would they need my help with that if they're answering that same overarching question for themselves? And my gap is that humans are just notoriously bad at seeing themselves clearly, especially without a process to lead them through. You're like walking around in one of those circus fun houses or carnival fun houses where one mirror shows you with like an extra 200 pounds because you're so wide, and then another mirror shows you and you look like you're 12 feet tall because you are being stretched vertically. We don't have a clear mirror for ourselves, and that's part of the human condition. Or maybe you've listened to yourself on a recording and you're like, I do not sound like that. It's because we aren't used to what we sound like. We don't have that unbiased perspective on who we are. And then the people that need this most, I could answer this overarching question for a million different audiences. I could answer it for maybe moms that are coming out of the postpartum stage and they're wondering, who am I? How do I express it? And help and be a mentor to mothers. I could help really massive businesses who have lost their way in the market. But who are you called to help with this the most, and who values it the most? So here's some examples. Who am I really? How do I express that? We already talked about how hard it is to see ourselves clearly. I also believe that personal brands are the future. In an age where all of our systems are under tension and everything seems to be changing at a record-breaking pace, if we're able to take control and offer our skills directly to the market outside of some of these traditional systems, if you're a health coach, you don't need to help people that are just at a hospital. You can help them before they reach that point. Or if you're a relationship coach, you can help people who are in relationships now. Entrepreneurs are helping change the world in all of their little corners. For that client that works with mothers around strength, the reason why it's so important is mom's health is often ignored past birth. So that 4th trimester and that postpartum period, we might get checkups and those kinds of things, but health is looked at as like a box to be checked. Okay, you passed your 6-week checkup, you can go and be a normal human being again. But the reality is often much different. There's this long journey that it takes to regain your strength and to navigate this new identity that you're in. You can also look at your credentials in terms of this gap. Why are you qualified to help people? So this client is a doctor of physical therapy. And then what is happening culturally that makes this work so important right now? This is related to the example that I gave for my brand, where I believe that personal brands are the future. But for hers, it might look more like, moms are more active than they have ever been culturally. Like they want to do all of the things. So I'm uniquely equipped to help them right now because more and more of my ideal clients need this work. I'll go over every example on this slide, but I wanted to give a lot of different industry examples so that you can find one perhaps that's close to what you do. But even if you aren't represented here, even if you're not in health or relationships or leadership or business, we don't have to be selling services to make this overarching question work. And don't freak out if this feels bigger than your current business. It's meant to be bigger because that's the juicy humanness that's going to attract people to you. And once we have brainstormed a bunch of different ideas under here, then we want to pull it together into something a little bit more succinct. And again, this may not be something that you land on 100% right here in today's training, but you can workshop this so that you come up with this beautiful nugget of clarity that you can use on your about page, on your homepage, on maybe your bio on Instagram or on Facebook. You can tell stories about this core concept often and again and again. So on your sheet of paper, you have all of your different brainstorming and see if you can pull it together. So I help this type of person achieve or answer this question and why you're doing it can be a really great structure for it. I help entrepreneurs build brands on truth, not trends, so they can change the world with what they know. I help entrepreneurs build brands on truth, not trends is an answer to my overarching question, and how I'm helping answer that for people in the world, in real life, so they can change the world with what they know is a nod to that belief that personal brands are the future. And if I were to extend this, I would say because it's really hard for these entrepreneurs to see themselves clearly, but I wanted it to be as succinct and bite-sized as possible. So this one core concept should be something that you get tired of saying. It should be something that you repeat again and again. I often say this in every single introduction that I do for a YouTube video, for example. I'll pull out little pieces of it and you'll find it on my Instagram bio. You'll find it on my website because we're reiterating this core concept again and again. So step number 2, once we have a statement, how can we tell people about it? Discussion at Stanford revealed that when statistics are presented as raw data, people often struggle to remember them. However, when the statistic is placed in the context of a narrative or story, people are 22 more times likely to remember them. Wild. So I have a 3-part system for you to turn your core concept into a story. So we set the stage when we're telling a story by talking about some tension, a challenge, something that is present in your life, or a decision that has to be made. There's some tension where something has to change. From there, we introduce what the turning point was for you. And then finally, we talk about transformation. So when I think about my own origin story and how this core concept has come to life in my business, I'm going to share my own story as an example here. Like I said, when I started out online, I was trying to model what the successful entrepreneurs were doing. I was trying to adopt little pieces of their personality into my own so that I would resonate with people in the same way, or maybe even just a fraction of the way that they were. And I was very awkward. I was constantly changing from hard, tough love, kick in the pants type of coaching to, okay, I'm going to be aspirational and I'm going to name my signature service How to Find Your It Factor. And this was as cringeworthy as it sounds now that I'm relaying this story. And to make things worse, it wasn't working. I could barely sell a done-for-you copywriting service for $97. And I had the skill set, I had the knowledge, I had all of the building blocks, the marketing degree, the experience in business, but I wasn't telling a compelling story and people weren't resonating with me because of this awkwardness. It wasn't until I discovered brand archetypes, I had this major epiphany aha moment. I started leaning into who I really am. From there, everything changed. I'm, like I said, a decade into this. So this wasn't an overnight success by any means, but I have sold over $1 million in course sales. I've had hundreds of one-on-one clients and thousands of students. And all of this is because I'm building my brand on truth, not trends. I'm not trying to be anybody else anymore. I've answered that question. Who am I and how do I express that? I'm sharing my story. I would love for you to start to tease out from your past experience. What was the tension? What had to change? What was the untenable situation that you were in? Or maybe that a client was in. This doesn't necessarily have to be a story about you. We can use this story structure again and again, whether we're talking about our own origin, our clients, even sharing an example from history. One of my favorite authors, I'm going to reference him a little bit later in this training, is James Clear. He wrote Atomic Habits. He hardly ever tells stories about himself, but often shares stories from history and what we can learn from those histories. And we learn from them very effectively because stories connect with us on that emotional level. So what is your tension? What was your tension? What was the turning point? And then what is the after? What was the transformation? I don't want to oversimplify this. If every time you start to communicate and you start to write an email or put out a social media post or a blog post, If you think through these three pieces and incorporate them into the lesson or into the message that you're trying to share, it becomes more compelling. If you know the framework, you can apply it to wherever you need. So your own business or personal journey, a client or customer result. What was the before? What changed? What was the after? Maybe a mistake that you made in the past and how you made it right, or a crossroads in your life where you had to make a decision, an idea that you had. That could be the tension. It's like, I have this idea. I really want to bring it to life. How do I do it? All of these are fantastic little kernels that we can spread throughout our marketing to convey this core concept. And another way to think about it might be, where has this overarching question shown up? And then when I think about that in my own life, in my own business, all of these different situations spring to mind. When have I been trying to answer that question? Who am I? And how is it going to be? And that story can be 20 years long, or it can be 5 minutes long. And sometimes our transformation, I just want to voice this really quickly, the transformation at the end doesn't have to be, I went from making $0 to $1 million. I probably shouldn't have even included that in my story. It can be a sense of clarity. It can be a sense of purpose. It can be a small win. It doesn't have to be this grand rags to riches story that you share. It's really compelling just to hear how things change, how you navigate different situations in your life. And then if you want the advanced version of this, once you have the basic outline of the story, there's a few different things that we can play up or play down to make it even more compelling. One of them is to talk about the stakes. Talk about your emotion. I'm going to share another story that may not be super relevant to many of you, but the way that I tell the story is I add in the emotions in the facts, and the emotions are always relatable. Similar to your overarching question, when we tap into kind of that core of the human experience, it doesn't even matter if somebody's experienced something similar. We can feel what that feels like when people speak to the emotions. And then your story is a work in progress. Your results are always going to be getting better. So you can update your story as you go to share how the transformation continues to evolve. What is that desirable outcome that you can share is on the other side of this work? We sell what we sell because we know that it makes a difference for people. So make sure that you're actually articulating the difference that it has made for you, for your clients, for the people that have engaged with this work. And then next, what do we do? Like, once we have some clarity, maybe we've updated our bio statement and we're sharing content, but we still feel really discombobulated. What do we do to kind of like systemize this to keep moving towards growth? This is the system that I use whenever I'm feeling fuzzy, because there's not ever this like finish line. You're like, okay, now I have complete clarity. I know exactly what I'm going to do for the next 20 years of my business and my life, and everything is peachy. But as we're going, we continue to create more and more momentum through our original clarity. And whenever we need to refocus and re-energize ourselves in our purpose, we first go back to, why am I doing this in the first place, which is that core concept. We come back to communicating our stories, because that's how we're going to connect with people. But on the back end of things, if we ever need to put our ducks in a row, this is the most effective way that I've discovered to do it. Part of it was born from that book, Atomic Habits, that I mentioned. He talks about the British cycling team as an example. They went from being one of the worst cycling teams to one of the best through the idea of 1% improvements. And they looked at everything. They looked at improving the PSI in the bike tires. They looked at replacing the pillows that the athlete slept on to be the most optimal pillow. They optimized the nutrition for each of the athletes. And none of those little changes made a big difference in of themselves. But when you multiply them all together, your entire life or your entire business, whatever you're applying those improvements to, can dramatically shift. And I remembered this, or I relearned this, I solidified this knowledge in an experience that I had in 2019, where my husband had just gotten out of the military. So he took a bit of a sabbatical before jumping into a regular civilian job after that. We decided that we were going to trek to Everest Base Camp. Again, this isn't like super relatable to most people, right? Most of us haven't trekked in the Himalayas to Everest Base Camp. But the most profound experience happened while I was doing this. First of all, the whole lead up to the trip was amazing. We had to do this intensive training program. We had this singular goal in mind, and got to the point where we were training for 2 hours on the Stairmaster with weight on our backs, with our hiking boots. And I realized at that point that having this really big, audacious goal was very, very motivating for me. I was really excited and willing to do hard things because I knew that I had this trip coming up. And the thing that surprised me the most during this experience was how slowly we walked. So we had a great trekking team. We had Sherpas that were helping us along the way, guides that were guiding the way. And they forced us to walk much slower than we thought that we wanted to walk. And they forced us to stop at what felt like every tea hut along the way to drink tea, to eat snacks, to dry out our socks, do all of the things. And lo and behold, after those 11 days of trekking from, there's a little town called Lukla, has the most dangerous airport in the world, up to Everest Base Camp, we had covered, I always get the numbers wrong, so I apologize. My brain doesn't hold on to numbers for reasons that we've already talked about. But we got up to 17,000 feet. I don't remember the meters calculation. Apologies for non-American listeners, friends here. And we had covered 35 miles on our way up. And then we had to do that all the way in reverse and do it on the way back down. And the Sherpa shared with us when we got to the top and we reached this really big, audacious goal, that the people who do it on their own, they often move too quickly and they burn out, they get sick, they get the kombu cough, and they aren't able to reach their goal because they move too quickly. So I realized on this trip and later in my business, when I implemented the system that I'm about to teach you, that I needed to account for how strenuous the whole journey is going to be. It's not going to be something that I can accomplish in a day. So I have to make sure that I design a system that flexes with my life. And if I just simply focus on those 1% improvements and those baby steps that I know create results, I'm going to reach the summit. And as a side note, it is really helpful to have a guide to remind you of this, to make sure that you're not overexerting yourself. So this is that system. I've had over 100 students through the program that, if nothing else, this system is the one that has created the most results. So when I got back from Everest and I was feeling like really discombobulated and unruddered in my business, and I was thinking about the lessons learned, I realized that I wanted to design a system of baby steps that I can take consistently, not perfectly, but consistently in my business. What would be those baby blocks that or baby steps that would actually create results? And I realized it boils down to 3 actions. If we improve something consistently, so if we improve a system, we build an asset, we make something work just a little bit better, we publish something. So we're consistently being visible to the people that need you. We're consistently sharing that core concept. We're consistently sharing stories. And then if we push ourselves outside of our comfort zone and make offers consistently, there's no way that we can't win, because we're going to be getting better and better every single week, every single month. We're going to be gathering data, getting incredible insight from the conversations that we're having by putting ourselves out there. And we're going to be getting better and better and better at publishing content. So even if it's imperfect, even if it's not the most strategic content in the world, if we're consistently publishing, if we're consistently making little baby offers, and if we're making things better along the way, that is the system. That is the thing that creates growth, momentum, sales, audience growth, all of those things. If ever you're feeling discombobulated like I do, and I think all of us do every so often, come back to these 3 things. Is one of them missing in your cadence, in your rhythm of building your business? Are we avoiding the hard work of making offers? And offers isn't just asking somebody to buy a course. It's reconnecting with relationships that have maybe fizzled out. It's pitching yourself to be on a podcast or on a stage. It's asking people to connect for like a coffee call or a connection call and growing your network. It is asking people for testimonials or reviews that you've worked with in the past. Those one-on-one asks are what grows the momentum. It's actually what creates the results. And then the improve and the publish support that action. I have a gift for taking really big, hairy, complicated things and making them simple. I hope they still feel satisfying. These 3 things, core concept, storytelling, and this strategy of the IPO habit, have no joke created the most incredible results. It sounds like a crazy infomercial when I say it, but the first time I implemented this, I lost 20 pounds. I was in a cycle of bad habits and returned to the gym and eating healthy, just making those 1% improvements over the time. I had my first record-breaking month, which was incredible. And things just felt easy because I was putting in those daily actions. So with those 3 things, you now have a choice. I hope that you take everything that I shared with you today and put it into earnest action. Spend time dissecting each element of that core concept and bring it into a succinct way of telling people that how you help them, what you do. I hope that you tell more stories. I hope that you use the IPO strategy to put this into action to start seeing results. Some of you may just take this and be like, great, Kaye, love it. Thank you so much. And that's fantastic. But for some of you, you may want some more support and accountability around putting this into action. And if that is you, I would love to invite you into my favorite program. It's called the Brand Advantage. It's a 30-day brand building sprint. I like to think about it, and forgive the health reference if you have no idea what this is, but it's kind of like Whole30 for your brand, where we're simply doing the work for 30 days and suspending judgment and suspending hesitation and seeing what happens. There's a lot of value in educational experiences like this one, where we're coming together, we're sitting down for an hour, we're working on a brand, we're creating this clarity, we're doing the research, we're doing the brainstorming. But the magic and the results come from putting that into action and putting it out into the world. And often we get in our own way when we're set with that task. So I have been hiding this program behind closed doors for the last couple times that I've ran it, but I have been really excited to bring it back out into the forefront and to offer it as a standalone offer for you. So like I said, we've had over 100 students that have gone through this with incredible results, have recouped their investment, made more progress than any other course that they've ever went through, found clarity through action, and begrudgingly, even though I use phrases like take imperfect action, and we've all heard it before, took that, run with it, embodied it, and saw results. A lot of clarity comes from doing it live, from doing the thing, from pushing ourselves outside of the comfort zone. And the basis of this 30-day sprint is rooted in those IPO actions. What are you going to improve? What are you going to publish? What are you going to offer? But then there's a backbone of strategic learning in the actual lessons so that you know exactly what to post. You learn to speak the language of your ideal clients. You install these systems and habits to stay consistent, and you tweak your offer so that people understand the value of it. This is what it looks like. We start with your core operating system. And even if you don't join me in the Brand Advantage, I think one of the most impactful things that I did before I started this sprint of action taking that I talked about the results of just a moment ago was I took inventory of my life, and I really got honest with myself about what was creating results for me, what was fueling me, what was pouring into the results that I want to create in my future, and what was hindering me. And just getting awareness of that gives you a whole mess of ideas of things that you can improve, things that you can shift or remove from your life to make sure that you have the greatest chances of success. From there, we talk about and get deeper on, once you have your core concept, how is the rest of your brand defined? How can we articulate exactly who we are and what we do with confidence, with certainty? We shift into meeting your ideal clients where they're at. So we have our unique answer. We've started to identify what some of those gaps are earlier in this training that make it a no-brainer for people to work with you. But beyond that, what is the language that we're going to use to communicate that to your ideal client? How are we converting that into content that converts so that we have this system of staying visible day in, day out without it taking over our entire life? Because your business is more than just publishing content on social media. You need to have time for the rest of your life? And then what are the brand standards that help you get recognized more and more over time? The reason why I said it's my favorite program is because I've been teaching online branding for, like I said, the last decade. And there's a million things that we could focus on. Like there's a million different facets of consumer psychology that we can speak to marketing strategy, marketing systems, funnels, et cetera, et cetera. And when I created this course, I knew that I needed to be as lightweight as possible. So I distilled all of my best work down into these 4 simple modules. They're less than 30 minutes each, so that we can focus on taking action instead of just being in learning mode. So this program creates results because of that structure, and because I've taken this decade of experience down into this mini, not mini, because I feel like that negates the value here, but it doesn't take forever to consume the content. It's more focused on taking action. And what it looks like is we have the video lessons, the core operating system, and the 4 modules that I talked about. You get access to a habit tracking app and some paper versions of that as well. And inside of the private student community, we are focused wholeheartedly on just staying in imperfect action. I offer weekly coaching calls to keep you accountable. On each of those weekly calls, we have prizes for different criteria for staying in action that week. And there's a bunch of swipe files, templates, tools to keep you moving along the way. I've sold this before for $9.97. Like I said, it's been behind closed doors for the last few launches, taking it out of the vault, offering it again publicly for the first time in forever. And I wanted to have a special price. So I'm offering it for this round for $4.97 for this 30-day container where you're held accountable and given support to stay in action to create these kinds of results for your business as well. There's also a payment plan where it breaks the investment up into 2 months. If you're ready to stop spinning your wheels, to staying stuck in uncertainty or in a cycle of procrastinating, and you're ready to get into action, I would be so excited to welcome you into the Brand Advantage.